By the time spring came round, White Deer Hollow Academy was ready to reopen. That year, Zhu Xi was 49. His academy gradually became the centre of scholarship for the entire country and remained for many years afterwards the foremost Confucian academy in China. Neo-Confucianism was enthusiastically promoted by the imperial court at the time of the Qing dynasty, when LUSHAN culture enjoyed a golden age.
现在到的地方是庐山最著名的白鹿书院，在中国古代，这里是古代学子们在这里读书学习的场所。
White Deer Hollow Academy stands beside Mount Lu in the shade of towering trees. It's 1,000 years old. Historically, it was one of the 4 major academies in China, the other 3 being Stone Drum Academy in Hangyang, Yuelu Academy in Changsha, and Yingtianfu Academy in Shangzhou. At one time, it was regarded as the country's foremost academy. White Deer Hollow is thought to have been given its name by the great Tang Dynasty poet Li Bai. It's said that he raised a white deer to keep him company while he studied on Mount Lu. During the Southern Tang period in the mid-10th century, the academy was known as LUSHAN National School or the White Deer National School. It was during the Northern Song period that the name was changed to White Deer Hollow Academy. However, during the Song dynasty, the Zhenzong emperor forbade anyone from attending academies or even sitting the imperial examination. This marked the start of a period of decline for the country's academies. But then, in the autumn of 1179, fate brought someone to White Deer Hollow Academy who would revive its fortunes after it had lain abandoned for 125 years. The scene that met the visitor's eyes filled his heart with emotion. This person was Zhu Xi. Later generations would refer to him as Zhuzi, and the master of 600 years of the School of Principle.
宋学的一个最大的特点，它是儒学发展的一个新的时期。它跟这个先秦儒学相比，以及跟两汉儒学相比，最大的不同，这时候建立了理学。宋代的理学不是简单先秦儒学或者是两汉儒学的翻版，它是儒释道3家思想的一个新的升华。这个非常重要，所以在思想史上把这个儒学叫做新儒学。理学的建构过程当中，作用最大的是朱熹，所以学者们都讲朱熹也是这个理学的儒学的在宋代集大成者。
The site of White Deer Hollow Academy moved Zhu Xi to write a letter to the imperial court. There are hundreds of dilapidated Buddhist temples on Lushan, none of which has been repaired. As for places where Confucian scholars may study, there is only White Deer Hollow Academy. It is run down and has been neglected for 100 years. It's such a pity. Therefore, I earnestly request that White Deer Hollow be repaired. But in that same year, to the north, Genghis Khan, the great Mongolian leader, began an uprising. He united the tribes of the grasslands and seized territory across China's north. At the same time, in the south, peasants in Guangzhou and other areas rebelled against southern Song dynasty rule. Therefore, despite writing to the imperial court on 2 occasions, Zhu Xi received no reply. Fortunately, the setbacks did not discourage Zhu Xi from pursuing his dream. He rebuilt White Deer Hollow Academy single-handedly. From raising the funds, buying the land and building the classrooms, to employing teachers and recruiting students, Zhu Xi personally attended to every matter, big and small. By the time spring came round, White Deer Hollow Academy was ready to reopen. That year, Zhu Xi was 49. In spring, the natural world begins to show signs of life. All across Lushan, the busiest time of the year begins for the farmers. The fragrance of life begins to ripple across the ridges and the fields. Jubilantly, the streams pass through countless gullies, spreading joy across the mountains and plains. This is the season when hopes are at their highest. In a similarly hope-filled spring more than 800 years ago, White Deer Hollow Academy reopened. The first teacher to take to the rostrum was Zhu Xi himself. Thus, a new era began for White Deer Hollow Academy. At a time when society placed such great importance on the imperial examination, the educational philosophies expounded by Zhu Xi created an important alternative model for cultivating learning.
我们今天可能要很注意书院这个东西，不是门槛啊，你听得懂你就多听啊，听不懂你就少听啊，对不对？反正他那个毕业也没有什么文凭等等之类的，他还是一个包括他这种讲学、问学、质询这种东西，即使在我们今天这么一个社会转型啊，人都是现在高学历意味着高收入，这个情况下都是讲教授的一些实用的、急功近利的一些东西，他就很难退下来，能够我们今天说老话吧，就是能够重新梳理一下自己的世界观、价值观。
Children seemed to Zhu Xi 800 years ago to be particularly vulnerable. He believed that if ethical behavior was not instilled in people from a young age, then not only would the individual be adversely affected, so too would the whole society. Zhu Xi split each student's education into two different but closely related stages, primary and secondary. Zhu Xi likened a child's education to carving and polishing uncut jade. A person who was not properly educated, he believed, would succumb to unethical behavior when older. Zhu Xi suggested that primary education should consist of teaching children things as small as putting on their caps properly and as important as loyalty and filial piety. He also advocated the 3 cardinal guides and 5 constant virtues. He believed these were key to a child's basic education. Once students reach 15 years of age, they should receive a secondary education with a focus on doctrine and exploring why things are the way they are. Zhu Xi valued gradual and well-ordered advancement and set store by ethics and morals.
我们知道宋门理学当中提到一个最重要的一个概念，就是孝顺父母，这个是几千年来的传统，到现在为止呢，恐怕也是我们的一个基本的价值观。那么这个价值观当然在教育当中，我们会有一些修身行为的教育，在这方面一直还是传承的。
But there was more to the new era of White Deer Hollow Academy than the resumption of teaching. Zhu Xi also promoted the School of Principle in combination with academic education. He personally drew up the regulations for the Academy, which he called the White Deer Hollow Academy Code. A copy can be seen today at the Academy. These rules, as a set of educational goals, forms and rules, were, in effect, the first education policy in the history of China. The rules of White Deer Hollow Academy reflect Zhu Xi's educational philosophy of following the Confucian classics as the foundation of education. He resolutely opposed the corruption in the government school system and the inappropriate and chaotic observance of educational principles. He proposed a specific model for running the academy and a principled approach to teaching. He urged his students to first get a grasp of logic and then adjust their attitude and cultivate their moral character. He also taught them that if they were to ever be responsible for state affairs, their goal should be to bring peace to all under heaven. To a Neo-Confucian, these principles represented the key ideals in life. Most of the other academies at the time followed White Deer Hollow Academy. Even official schools would seek its guidance. The regulations formulated by Zhu Xi became the ultimate rules and the benchmark for education in China for several hundred years. In Japan today, a number of schools still adhere to the rules of White Hollow Academy.
在这个朱熹之后啊，包括王阳明和宋明理学的很多学者，都是极大的促进了我们中国的书院教育，而书院教育成了中国独特的一道风景。它主要的就是人文教育，这种教育跟当时的科举考试形成了非常鲜明的对比和反差，这也是我们中国到了这个宋明的时候，教育传统的一个重要的一个转折。
Certain aspects of Zhu Xi's philosophy of education are still valued today. In particular, the ideas that one should cultivate high aspirations and have a strong sense of morality. But other aspects clearly conflict with prevailing values. It would seem, for example, that his esteem for restraint and his advocacy of subordinating human desires to heavenly principles go against the modern ideas of cultivating individuality and encouraging and developing personal creativity.
在朱熹看来，这里的天理啊是人的正常的欲望，而人欲啊是人的不正常的欲望。什么意思呢？给你举个例子。人呢都要吃饭，吃饭呢基本的吃饱就可以了，稍微讲究一点也行。但是你说我为了吃饭，我花个几千万，花个几百万，这样的话，他就离开了 人的欲望的本来的含义，就变得过分了。朱熹他要反对的是人的过分的欲望。
Since time immemorial, philosophers have felt compelled to debate the conflict between heavenly principles and human desires. Zhu Xi maintained, heavenly principles represent an objective code of ethics that is external to a person's inner life, and ethical standards which people must incorporate into their behavior. Lu Jiaoyuan, a contemporary of Zhu Xi's, expressed a different sentiment. He said, the principles of the cosmos are present in everyone's soul, and many ethical precepts are innate. The inherent nature of people's souls is the basis of ethics. Zhu Xi, as the founder of the Neo-Confucian school of principle, engaged in a long-running debate with Lu Jiaoyuan, the founder of the Neo-Confucian school of mind. The argument focused on whether a person's temperament should be constrained or liberated. The debate continued for hundreds of years among later proponents of their respective schools. In fact, in 1175, 4 years before he revived White Deer Hollow Academy, Zhu Xi met Lu Jiaoyuan and his brother Lu Jiaoling at Goose Lake Temple in Shangrao, Jiangxi. Zhu Xi's philosophical views differed sharply from those of the two brothers, and they debated the issues fiercely for 3 days. When they finally parted, there was much ill feeling. The event is referred to in history as the Goose Lake Meeting.
鹅湖之会是历史上非常有名的一个我们叫同一种价值观系统里面不同学术流派的观点一次重要的交锋。其实他们两个人的观点分别在中国历史上代表2个传统。朱熹代表中国的一个传统叫渐修，就逐渐修养，然后来领悟事物的道理和伦理的至关重要的道理。而陆九渊代表的是我们另外一个传统，叫做顿悟， 就是先悟入道，体会道。这个道就在自己心里面，就是自己的良知，或者是良心，或者是所谓的心当中的灵明。顿悟之后，再去做这个推广，或者说去建立，这是他们两个人之间的一个主要的区别。
Today, visitors to White Deer Hollow Academy may notice a white tablet. It stands out from the others in the corridor of tablets. Its heading reads, White Deer Hollow Academy Lecture Notes. But the lecture refers to one given by Lu Jiuyuan. But why would Zhu Xi allow a tablet to be set up that reflected the philosophy of a rival school of thought? In 1181, little more than a year after White Deer Hollow Academy resumed teaching, Zhu Xi declared himself director of the academy and assumed overall charge of the teaching. The school of principle was just putting down roots at the time, and its influence was still quite limited. But Zhu Xi, in promoting his school of thought, refused to exclude others. He regularly invited philosophers of all persuasions to expound their views and broaden his students' understanding. Of all the scholars he invited to the academy, the one who gave him the most pleasant surprise was Lu Jiuyuan. The popular belief is that the school of principle and the school of mind, which arose around the same time and were rivals for hundreds of years, were diametrically opposed to each other. But in fact, as scholars, Zhu Xi and Lu Jiuyuan were both open-minded and had a broad vision. They also had great intellectual integrity that transcended petty quarrels over who was right and who was wrong. In fact, Lu Jiuyuan lectured on the subject. The superior man focuses on the connotation of what is said, and the inferior man focuses on its utility. The story goes that his lecture moved Zhu Xi to tears, and he ordered that Lu's lecture notes be written up and engraved on a stone tablet, which was then erected in the academy grounds, where it still stands today. White Deer Hollow Academy, compared to other academies at the time, embraced a broader vision and offered more depth of education. This was due in part to the way it was organized, but more particularly to the fact that Zhu Xi maintained an open mind towards other schools of thought. As a result, his academy gradually became the center of scholarship for the entire country, and remained for many years afterwards the foremost Confucian academy in China. In the same year that he invited Lu Jiuyuan to lecture at White Deer Hollow Academy, Zhu Xi resigned his position, left the academy, and returned home. He subsequently made it his main mission in life to proselytize the philosophy of principle and promote academic education. He even edited a revised edition of the 4 Confucian classics. He also founded Wuyi Seminary, Zhangzhou Hermitage, and Yuelu Academy, all of which became centers for spreading his philosophy. Still, White Deer Hollow Academy on Mount Lu continued to play the leading role in spreading Zhu Xi's philosophy of principle, and as Zhu Xi's reputation rose and fell over the centuries, so did that of the academy.
朱熹提出来的学说，在他生前实际上是被打压的。在公元1198年的时候，朱熹的学说被朝廷赐为伪学。到2年后，1200年，朱熹去世，当时只有辛弃疾一个人去送葬，非常凄凉。也就是说，朱熹在死的时候，我想他应该也不会想到，他所修订的四书最后会成为科举考试的正式教科书。又过了9年，南宋政府才给朱熹恢复名誉。
In the course of the following dynasties, White Deer Hollow Academy was at times held in high esteem, and at others shunned. However, Juxi's philosophy of principle ultimately came to dominate Chinese intellectual thought. An inscription over a doorway written by the Kangxi Emperor of the Qing dynasty reads, "Study unveils the secrets of nature and heaven." Many of the Confucian academies were given such signs during the Qing dynasty. They were placed there to emphasize the contribution made by the court to passing on the philosophy of principle and cultivating talented people. Collectively, the philosophy of Zhou Duyi, Zhu Xi, Lu Jiaoyuan, and Wang Yangming is known as Neo-Confucianism. It was enthusiastically promoted by the imperial court at the time of the Qing dynasty when Lushan culture enjoyed a golden age. White Deer Hollow Academy was a magnet that drew Neo-Confucian scholars to Lushan. But more than that, it was a beacon for the whole Chinese intellectual community. The 20th century Chinese philosopher Hu Shi said that White Deer Hollow Academy had epitomized the trend of Neo-Confucianism in China for 700 years. Next to White Deer Hollow Academy, there's a column. On it are listed the names of scholars who scored the highest marks in the imperial examination. Another column displays the names of scholars from Jiangxi province who passed the exam. All these scholars once studied at the academy, and the columns were intended to confer a kind of immortality on them and impress new students with the rich traditions of the academy. The small room once occupied by Zhu Xi no longer exists. However, traces of his presence are evident everywhere you look in the academy grounds, on the rocks, in the streams, and on the walls. His powerful calligraphy gives a sense of being animated by a remote, mysterious force. It leaves a lasting impression on anyone who sees it. The feeling is akin to having Zhu Xi himself beside you. The practice of building academies in mountain forests where scholars could study in quiet seclusion disappeared long ago. But still, by seeking out the shadows of the past, we can hope to understand the people and events of those times. In honor of the Academy's name, someone had the idea of bringing in some white deer from a Mediterranean country. They are now a popular attraction at the Academy. However, this new innovation has given rise to apocryphal stories about deer keeping students company while they studied. Thus, a monument was set up on a mountaintop that was intended to reveal an emperor's love for his people. The Hongwu Emperor continued to favor Lushan. For thousands of years, it was the tradition among China's emperors to revere high mountains. In the minds of the ancient Chinese, the towering mountain was a symbol of supreme power.